Hey Spooniverse! Thanks for tuning in to Mixology 101. I'm JD, an editor here at Spoon, and this is Anthony Caporelli, the Director of Beverage Studies at the Institute of Culinary Education. Total badass. If you tuned in before, you've seen us make loads of classic cocktails, talked about all your basic alcohols and bitters, pretty much everything you can find at the bar. But it's a new year. It's 2017. So we decided we should mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I actually have no idea what we're doing today. But I know it involves fire.
We have fire, and any show that starts with fire has my attention, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're going to actually end with that. So I'm going to go ahead and blow that out so we don't burn our faces off. So this is actually called proofing. So for those of you who have ever looked at the label of a bottle of spirits, you know that there's a little number on there and it says proof. It's usually 80. A lot of people don't really know
Sometimes
what that means.
there's 150.
Sometimes
like 150
there's 151.
I learned that one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know what that means. Some people do. It's a measure of the alcohol content. How much ethanol is actually in the spirit. And what you find out is that if you take the proof and cut it in half, you get the percent alcohol by volume. So spirits that are 80 proof, like vodka, are actually 40% alcohol.
Okay.
Which begs the question, why would they make you have to do math?
So much math.
While you're drinking, right? Doesn't make any sense. So we're actually going to explain why that is and where proofing comes from. And it does involve fire. So we're going to end up right back over there. But what I figured I would do, because it is a new year, going to get a little bit more sciencey on you guys this week. We're going to actually go from what I call wheat to whiskey. We're going to take I'm going to show you the entire process of making whiskey, and it's all right here on this table. So you'll understand. And there's three separate things that have to happen in order to make whiskey. The first one is you need for all alcoholic beverages, and it's fermentation. The second one is distillation, and that's how you make spirits. And the third one is oak aging, and that's where you get all your brown spirits from. Cool? All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is fermentation, and this is where we actually get alcohol. This is how alcohol is created. And fermentation is a process that's carried out by yeast, which is a fungus, and it's only one cell. Yeah, and it pretty much just does one thing. The only thing that yeast does is it eats sugar and excretes out the back end, ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide, liquid and gas. Sound familiar for excreting?
Totally.
Right.
Two of my favorite poisons.
Exactly. So that's what yeast does. It eats sugar and excretes ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. Now this is really good for us because we like ethyl alcohol, and we even like ethyl alcohol that has carbon dioxide in it. So
that's like the dream.
It is. So give me an example of a carbonated beverage that we drink that has alcohol in it. I mean, there's several of them.
Well, like hard cider, I was thinking of because I've left apple cider in the fridge for a very long time, like way too long of a time, and then gone to smell it, and it's kind of seemed off, but not in the way that milk goes off.
Correct.
In a way that kind of made me want to put it in a cocktail.
And what happened is what we're actually going to do for you right here. And this is cider. This is apple cider. And we're going to ferment it into hard cider. There's no alcohol in here. There's sugar. So what happens is when you add yeast to any sugar that's in solution, that's dissolved in water, the yeast will convert the sugar into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. So the difference between non-alcoholic cider that you give to the kids on Thanksgiving and the hard cider that we drink as adults is that there's no sugar in the hard cider. There's alcohol. And in the soft cider, there's no alcohol, there's sugar. Right. So that the yeast will convert one into the other.
Totally.
Cool? All right. So, and it's super, super easy. And people do this all the time. Now, yeast is very common. It's like one of the most common organisms on the planet, which is why, even if you don't put yeast in the cider, there was some in there already in your fridge, probably living on things or maybe even in the cider itself.
That's not creepy at all. Good to know.
No, it's not creepy.
Imaginary things just living all over the place.
You have yeast on your skin. There's yeast in the air. Okay. So what I have done is taken baker's yeast, and this is just like the yeast
that you put in like bread and cookies. And,
Same thing. So I put it in a little bit of warm water. Yeast likes things about body temperature, and I just dissolved the yeast and mixed it up. And all I'm going to do is pour this into some cider that we got from the supermarket, and it's better if you get unpasteurized cider so that it has all the natural stuff in it.
Totally.
And all I'm going to do now is just kind of stir this up or incorporate it just a little bit, and we are going to let this sit.
Cool.
And we're going to see
let
what
that
happens.
yeast do its thing.
Yeah.
Work your magic.
Exactly. And what we're looking for is bubbles.
Okay.
Now, what's the bubbles? What are in the bubbles based on what I just told you?
Oh, the carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide, exactly.
Shout out to my chem teacher from the 10th grade.
So we can actually watch the yeast going to the bathroom because that's what it's doing. It's eating the sugar and then it's excreting the ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. And what we're going to end up is hard cider. Now, if you do this instead of using cider, if you do this with mashed up grains like barley or wheat, you get beer. Right. And that's why beer is carbonated, folks. Beer should be naturally carbonated when it ferments. The sugars turn into the alcohol and carbon dioxide. So if you do it with grains, cereal grains, you end up with beer. If you do it with juices, like fruit juices, you get cider. If you do it with grapes, what do you get?
Wine.
Right.
Or champagne if you use specific grapes in France.
And if you keep the carbon dioxide in the wine.
Oh.
So if I were to close this up and seal it, the carbon dioxide would have nowhere to go. So it gets dissolved into it and you end up with sparkling beverages like cider or beer, right? Or champagne. But if I let it out, the carbon dioxide will just go out into the air and this will be not carbonated. And that's where the rest of the wine world comes from. But it's the same exact process. Last one I want to mention, because one of my favorites, is honey. If I ferment honey, what do I end up getting?
Is that mead?
It is mead!
Yes! That is my Viking blood coming out right now.
Have you ever had mead?
I did. I went to a Viking bar in Stockholm and they only served mead and it was delicious. It was like a little bit sweeter than like beer. It was almost like kind of like beer meets cider, but it wasn't as carbonated, right?
Like, you can make it sparkling or still, just like wine. Wait, you said you're Viking blood.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like a 10th Danish.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. I actually, for Christmas, just got one of those DNA kits, and I sent away, and so I'm going to find out what I am.
When we find out what all of your origins are, let's do like a drink from every
I've been
country.
saying I've been Italian the whole time, but I could be Viking. Who knows? All right, anyway, so back to the thing. So we have, we're making cider here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that alcohol, because here's the interesting thing. In this, what will become hard cider is yeast, but the yeast, if you think about it, is living in its own excrement.
Doesn't sound nice.
No, not very healthy.
Sounds kind of uncomfortable. Yeah.
Not very healthy. So if you imagine, like, if you have goldfish or a beta fish and you don't change the water, it doesn't do very well.
Yeah, right.
Same thing. So once the alcohol builds up to about 15%, that's too much for the yeast. It's toxic. So the yeast dies. So fermented drinks, generally, it's very difficult to get fermented drinks that have more than about 15% alcohol. Now, that's no fun for a frat party.
No.
You need more than that. All right. So if you want to get more than that, we have to step in as human beings and actually concentrate the alcohol.
Okay.
This is where step 2 comes in. This is distillation.
Okay.
So now, if
I've seen things
you've
that
seen
look
things
like this before. I don't know what goes on in them.
All right. So do you know what this is called? It's called a still, but do you know the type of still?
Still, no.
Okay. This is actually called a pot still.
Pot still.
Or an alembic is what it was. It was actually invented way back in the day.
Fancy.
Yeah, by like people in Arabia and stuff. They called it an alembic.
Okay.
But anyway, it's called a pot still today because it's a pot. It's just one pot and you put the beer in it and you turn it into whiskey. So this is a very, very common form of still, and they use it for things like bourbon, scotch, cognac brandy. They're all made in pot stills. They're very simple.
When I went to the Jameson distillery in Ireland, they had in Cork County, they had stills like this, but instead of this size, they were massive.
Giant.
Like, the size of like 3 cars stacked on each other, giant. Like huge stills. So imagine this mega scale at like all of your coolest distilleries.
Cool. So that's right. And they're so big actually that in distilleries they actually put them in the ground and like the floor will be here and the whole rest of the still's like under the floor. And you're still only like this big standing. They're giant and they have rows of them. Anyway, very cool. They're usually made out of copper. And they're designed to separate alcohol, the ethyl alcohol, from the rest of what's in the beer. So, how do you do that? I'm going to ask you a question. I think I've asked you this before. The boiling temperature of water.
is exactly how many degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit?
So let's start with Celsius because it's easier. It's a big round number.
100.
Very good. 100 degrees Celsius.
There we go.
212 degrees Fahrenheit. And please just try and remember that. I don't know why. It just seems to me like something you should know as an adult in life.
Basic hashtag adulting right there.
Oh, right. Exactly. Okay.
That's what we're all about.
Right. You should know the boiling point of water. You should know the freezing point of water.
If you know what a still is, you know.
So, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Ethyl alcohol actually boils at a lower temperature.
Okay.
Boils at 173.
Ooh.
Now, this is interesting because if I take beer, which is really just about 5% ethyl alcohol in about 95% water, and I heat the beer to between 173 and 212, the ethanol will start to boil, turn into a gas.
Right.
The water stays liquid.
Interesting.
That process is
separate.
Yeah, it's called distillation. And it's really just separating magic. It's called magic. It's really just separating liquids based on a difference in their boiling point, because how else are you going to separate liquids? All right, so this is very useful.
Totally.
So what I have done is in this pot still, which we've had running for a little while, I've placed beer. And then I heated it up to right around that temperature that we want. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to have you pour a little bit more beer in there so that we can keep this process going. And now this is obviously hot. Oops, go ahead. So just pour a little bit of beer in there.
And Anthony, if someone watching wanted to buy their own still, where can they find these?
eBay has a ton of these.
Good old eBay.
Now I will tell you, it is illegal to distill spirits in the United States of America unless you have a distilling license. The only reason that we're able, it's also very dangerous, which we'll talk about in a minute. The only reason we're able to do it here is because we're doing it in an educational setting, and the law allows you to distill very small quantities in an educational setting as long as we don't drink it. And you don't want to drink this because in addition to ethanol, there's a bunch of other stuff in there like methanol and other alcohols that aren't really good for you.
I'll just go with something bottled.
Right. So this is why during Prohibition, things like moonshine that weren't regulated were very, very dangerous.
Totally.
Okay.
Don't brew in your bathtub.
Don't do it. Now, here's the cool thing though. Fermenting, totally legal.
Like home brewing beer kits, home brewing meat.
Right.
Totally cool.
So so the reason I'm showing all this is so you understand what goes into this bottle that we're going to taste. But if you have an itch for getting into some of this stuff, I encourage you strongly to try home brewing. Really, really easy. And you can do beer, you can do cider, you can do mead, you can do wine, and you can buy kits.
Yeah, there's loads of kits
all
online.
over the place. Yeah,
or whatever
like
you want.
Amazon, all kinds of places. And it's super fun. Okay. So we're going to let this run a little bit longer, and what we are going to end up with, and you can see that I have some already in here, is essentially moonshine. It's ethyl alcohol.
Oh,
but
that's clear.
Yeah. But again, because of the nature of the very...
smell this.
Go ahead, yeah. And you can tell me what you think.
Wow, actually it smells surprisingly nice.
It smells great.
I thought it was going to be terrible, like rubbing alcohol or vodka, but...
No, it smells great. And the reason it smells good is because there's a lot of other things in there besides ethyl alcohol that come from the beer, and beer smells good, yeah?
Yeah, beer smells great.
Right. So this is a little bit more complicated chemically than I'm making it, but you get the basic idea. Please don't try this or drink this. It's extremely dangerous. But okay, demonstration-wise, it's cool. Now, here's the cool thing. The reason it's illegal to distill spirits is because they're very highly taxed. And the government wants their cut. It's also dangerous. Alcohol's flammable, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But you can blow yourself up. But it's goes back to mostly being a tax thing.
Totally.
So now here's what's happening. You are making moonshine. I'm talking back in the day. You're like a farmer. You're growing a bunch of corn. You've sold as much as you can. You have a bunch left. It's either going to rot,
or you do something with it.
Or you do something with it. So you make beer, and then you distill it into moonshine. And I can sell it, I can drink it, all kinds of good stuff. Okay, this is wonderful, but now the tax man comes along and says, hey, JD, you just made some moonshine. You owe me money. You owe me taxes. And you go, no, I didn't. It's water. It looks like water, right?
It's just like water.
So how do you prove back in 1750 that this is actually ethyl alcohol?
You light it on fire?
You light it on fire. Exactly right. Because ethanol will burn. Water doesn't burn.
Right.
Here's the cool thing. Ethanol and water mixed together will also burn as long as it's at least half ethanol.
Okay.
So I can do 50% ethanol and 50% water, light it on fire, and it'll burn. So here's what Taxman used to do. They used to come up to you and take your moonshine, and I want you to take a torch, go ahead, and light this on fire.
Hey, Anthony, another question from the audience.
You're going to pull this down. Yep. And then push the button. Good. And it's very difficult to see these
there's
flames.
a little blue flame going.
Can you see that this is now on fire?
Just made fire.
You made fire. But what you really did was prove that
I was making illegal moonshine.
That you're
and not
making
paying the
ethanol.
taxman.
Right. So you've proven that this is now taxable, that it's ethanol. And the way that you know, or what else you have proven, is that it is 50% alcohol. Remember I said it's got to be half?
Right. So it's 50 proof.
So 100% proven was 50% alcohol. And that's where that original math problem comes in.
Okay.
It could be more than 50%, but you didn't know that back in the day.
Right.
You just knew it was 100 proof.
That's all that mattered.
50% alcohol. And they scaled it. So what was our question from the audience?
Tara would like to know, does the alcohol percentage change the results of what you're doing? So if you were to put in a higher alcohol percentage beer or something into the still, would that change what,
Great question. So it would, you would have more alcohol in the pot, so you would end up with more alcohol as your output. What we call the distillate would be more, but it wouldn't change what you were actually making. What changes what you are actually making is what you start with, not how alcoholic it is. So this is a great question.
Okay.
So remember I said if you start with cereal grains, you get beer.
Right.
If you start with hard fleshed fruits like apples or pears, you get cider.
Grapes, you get wine.
Good, right. So what you start with determines what you end up with fermented wise. Same thing with distillation.
Okay.
If I distill wine that starts out as grapes, I get brandy. That's what brandy is. If I distill beer, for example, I will get moonshine, which we can then turn into scotch, which we're going to do later, right?
Awesome.
If I distill cider, I end up with apple brandy, what we call Applejack or Calvados.
Yum,
right?
love it.
So what you start with determines what you get. And I can do this with almost anything. I can do this with agave. We know what we get. What do we end up with at the very end? What's the spirit?
Tequila, my favorite.
Yes, but you know what happens before the tequila?
What? Mezcal?
No, different thing. There's an agave beer, and it's called pulque. Because you have to make beer in order to get spirits.
That's what that is.
You can't skip this step.
Right. Okay.
This is where the alcohol comes from. This just purifies it. Make sense?
You just blow my mind.
I know, man. It's awesome. Okay, so now we've gotten 2 steps, and this is all I need for fermented drinks. This is all I need for unaged drinks. So this would be like vodka, light rum, unaged tequila, gin, all that stuff. I can stop right here.
Right.
But if I want to go the next step and put color on it, I have to age it in oak. Now we don't take like food coloring or anything like that and add it. This all comes from taking casks, wooden
Just
containers.
like you always see in all of the movies of every like winery, or if you've ever been to a winery or a distillery, a vineyard, they just have those giant casks, and they're very particular about where they get their wood from, and that some things hold some alcohol and then go later. I went to a whiskey distillery and they were like, these are used for brandy originally, but now we use them for our whiskey, and there's a whole like number of times you can use them.
You
right?
bet. It's a
complicated world.
They call it wood science. Some of them call themselves wood chefs.
That is such an awesome job title.
I know. Okay, so
you got the wrong major in college. It's fine.
So what we do, I'm going to do this in what I call accelerated oak aging. I'm going to do it quickly right in front of you.
You mean we shouldn't do a Facebook Live video for like 20 years?
Yeah, we totally should. We actually should. That would be awesome, like a time lapse thing. All right. So you would take your moonshine and you would put it in a cask and you'd let it sit. Anywhere from a year, sometimes less, up to 15, 20, 25 years, depending on what you want. But we're going to do it much more quickly. So I have a laboratory magnetic stirrer because it's cool. And we'll also do what I want. So in here we have moonshine.
Okay.
I want you to just pour that in there right about halfway up, just about to the fattest part. Fabulous. And now you're going to take some oak chips and pour those in there. And these are from a cask that has been used and
oh yeah, you can tell because there's a little charred mark where they fire it and bang the iron in.
Yeah, put a good bunch in there. Put like about half of that in there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I want you to very slowly turn that knob clockwise. You'll hear it click. Good, perfect.
Ooh. Science is so cool.
Right, and I'm going to turn it down just a little bit so that it's a little more stable.
So that we actually have another question from the audience.
Yeah.
If I can throw it in here.
Please.
Tracy wants to know, and I think this has to do with the still. So what if someone wants to start with a little bit of everything and mix it all together within the still?
So I love questions like this. So one, I'm going to tell you that no matter what you can think of, somebody has tried it. And you can absolutely do that, but what you got would be very inconsistent and there wouldn't be a name for it. Now that doesn't matter. That's not a bad thing.
You could name it after yourself.
You can name it after yourself. You can totally name it after yourself. You can absolutely do that and you're going to end up with some alcoholic product. But again, it wouldn't fall into a category. You can ferment anything that has sugar in it. It might not have a name, but if you can ferment anything that has sugar in it, and you can distill anything that has alcohol in it. And here's a good example of that. So what they used to do in Italy when they were making wine was generally the wineries were owned by very rich people, but the people who actually made the wine were peasants. The peasants would take all of the leftover stuff, the skins, the twigs, the leaves, all of the stuff that you couldn't use anymore, the garbage. Yeah. They would take it home and they would press it really hard and they would get a liquid out of it that had sugar in it. But it was made from wine garbage, so it didn't taste very good.
Interesting.
But here's what they did. They could ferment it.
Yeah.
It still didn't taste very good. But then they could do just what you suggested. They put it in the still. And it was a mixture of whatever they had. They put it in the still. Once you distill it, it doesn't matter what you start with. You're getting ethyl alcohol.
Right.
And they started drinking it. And we know that today as grappa.
Oh!
That's what grappa is, right?
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Cool.
So really, really good question. And people have done things like this throughout the ages. This is how we create new beverage alcohol categories. So let me know how that works out. Okay, so you can see this has been running for 30 seconds?
Yeah, and it's already looks like it's tea or something.
You can already see that you have color on that, right? So we're just going to let that run. Now, what I want to do, so we've gotten the whole thing. We have fermented our cider. We have distilled it into moonshine, and now we are aging it into whiskey. Now, in reality, as you said, this would take 6 or 8 years to make this good. But we happen to have a bottle of lovely whiskey. Oh, so we can now taste the end product. You up for that?
I absolutely am.
All right, so why don't you pour us a little bit?
Just a splash.
Yeah, just a splash.
My.
Perfect. And I want to take you through what's called an organoleptic tasting. It's a fancy word for using your senses, like all of your senses. Because by now, I'm not a big fan of doing shots.
Yeah, no.
Right. One, because it's dangerous, and two, because
it's not responsible drinking.
It's not responsible drinking. But you don't get to appreciate all the hard work that goes into this stuff.
Totally.
You should rather than try and drink this as quickly as possible, you should drink it as slowly as possible, so that you can actually experience and appreciate all of the wonderful things going on.
People, I feel like, always do wine tasting, but they don't really,
Right. This is a lot of work. And all that's
in here.
And
blood, sweat, and tears, people.
Lots of love. So let's talk about how to do this properly so that we can appreciate it.
Right.
So the very first thing that you do when you do a full organoleptic tasting is I want you to look at it. I want you to actually appreciate it. It's pretty, yeah?
It is.
You want to appreciate the color, hold it up to the light. But the other thing is you want to make sure there's no schmutz in the glass. Right?
Totally.
There shouldn't be fruit flies. There shouldn't be dirt, right? Anthony's law, never put anything in your mouth that you haven't looked at. It's gotten me far.
I think that's fair.
So look at it. All right, that's the first thing you want to do. Now, the second thing you want to do is smell it. Okay. We call that nosing. Because if we didn't, everyone could do it. So we call it nosing because it's fancy. Now, I want to...
Just spinning.
So we're swirling, and what we're doing is we're trying to get some of that alcohol to vaporize so that my nose can smell it.
Okay,
my nose doesn't smell liquids very well.
Fair enough, mine neither.
Right, okay. So we're going to swirl it a little bit. Now, when you nose it, I want you to do this. I want you to do a little thing. I want you to take this glass, and I want you to put it so that it's just under one nostril and cutting the other one off. See what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And I want you to sniff very gently, and then I want you to move to the other nostril and do the same thing. Now, before you do that, do you have a dog?
I do.
You do. I want you to do an impression for me. I want you to do an impression of your dog smelling like the floorboard. Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Okay, so I do this all the time, and I've never once had somebody do this as the impression. Because dogs don't smell that way.
No, they go in for more. They're getting 10,000 scents at once.
They're smarter than we are.
Much smarter.
So dogs know that your nose turns off after about 3 seconds. So you can do this. But everything after that first 3 seconds is done. Right. So you have to sniff.
Okay.
All right. And that's why all my goofy sommelier friends love you. They're always
like...
Right. Okay. But it's the right thing to do.
So you might not look cool, but you will be very cool.
You will be very cool. All right. So I want you to sniff. But do it, as I said, one nostril and then move it. And don't pinch the nostril. Just keep them both open. And also keep your mouth open. What we're trying to do is the reason you keep the second nostril open is to bring in fresh air because the alcohol will burn your nose off. And when you keep your...
Whoa.
Okay,
now... Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. How long have you had your nose with you?
It's a little over 25 years.
Good. Have you just noticed for the first time you can only smell through one nostril?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also have never smelled any beverage that deeply. Like, I could taste it in my mouth when I got a good whiff. That was, whoa.
So I want you to
do it again.
I want you to find the nostril that you can smell with. And it's crystal clear because one just doesn't work.
Crazy.
Right. So I want you to find that nostril, and that's the one that... Now, you don't have to stick it right on your nose, but just off to the side. And again, you'll see wine people... So cool. They nose like this, off to the side, and they want you to know that they know how to use their nose. I don't think I could use the word "know" more. Okay, so keep your mouth open, keep the other nostril. Now, close your eyes.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me what images, memories, impressions, things like that. We don't smell the way that we see. We don't smell and go, oh, that's red. Or that's cinnamon.
No, I can smell things and I'm like, that's my grandma's
That's
house.
what I was right. That's exactly right.
Totally.
That's exactly right. We smell in memories and images and impressions and emotions.
Yeah.
You ever been walking down the mall and like one of these perfume people is testing a perfume or a cologne that like an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend used to wear, and suddenly you're back in that relationship.
Oh, I don't like this, and I'm super cranky now.
It happens all the time. You'll be walking through a cafeteria and suddenly you're back in high school, right? Or walking through where they just cleaned something and you'll remember last time you were in a hospital. We smell in memories and images and impressions and emotions.
Which is also why I found out that sometimes when you're craving foods, you're actually like craving like memories almost.
I love that you know that.
So it's like, oh my God, look this up. It's so dope. So in the way that when you think you're having deja vu and really what you're doing is just filling in gaps of your memory so you think it's happened before, the same thing is like when you crave a memory, sometimes you're like, God, I just want mac and cheese. And you're like, no, actually what I want is to like be eating mac and cheese with my brother when we were 8 years old, like in front of the TV with our dog.
That's amazing.
That is where the heart and the brain connect.
But this is why eating and drinking is such an important experience.
Yeah.
And again, it's why I think we should make these things last as long as possible.
Totally.
All right.
Savor it.
I love that.
It's beautiful. Life can be beautiful, guys.
We're gonna go drinking. I know at some point. Okay. So now you're smelling.
Yeah.
You're getting memories.
Totally.
Now you can taste it.
Okay.
Okay, but when you taste it,
I feel like I just got an introduction. Now I'm ready to dive
I want you to coat your whole mouth.
Okay.
All right. I want you to coat your whole mouth because if you remember from health class, you had that thing of the tongue, and there were like zones.
Yeah. You can taste more sweet here.
Yeah, it's not true. We have taste buds all over our whole mouth. Roof of the mouth, all the way down to our lungs.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're not really in zones.
Is that why sometimes when I have a weird sour candy and I feel like the side of my mouth is about to fall off, but my tongue isn't there?
Yep.
I'm tasting it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you got to taste through your whole mouth. So I want you to coat your whole mouth, and then I want you to swallow. But don't worry about that. That's just cleaning your palate.
Okay.
I want you to do it twice. The second one is the one that I want you to concentrate on.
Okay.
And that one, after you swallow, open your mouth and breathe in very gently through your mouth. Okay?
Palate cleanse.
Good. I'm going to do this with
I
you.
don't have to taste it to already tell this is very nice.
Freaking delicious.
And then while you guys try it, when you're done, can you let the crowd know what kind of whiskey we're drinking?
Great question. I can tell you right now. It is blended Scotch whiskey, Chivas Regal. It's one of my favorites. And just so that you know, whiskey is the broader category of aged spirits that all start life out as beer. You start with grain, you ferment it into beer, you distill it, age it in oak, you get whiskey. But within the whiskey category, we have things like Scotch.
Bourbon, rye,
good.
My favorite.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? What's the deal with grain alcohols?
Good.
You know?
So grain alcohol is a type of alcohol. It's unaged and it's distilled to a very high proof.
Okay.
Usually about
like
190.
a rough cut mixtape.
Yeah. It's about 95% alcohol.
Okay.
It is. I want you to think of grain alcohol as a bottle of ethanol. Okay. It's not even a spirit. I mean, it is technically, but
it's more like rubbing alcohol than it is.
I
like
want you to,
drink.
you don't drink it straight. You use it to add ethanol to other things.
Okay.
Famously, Kool-Aid, right? In a giant garbage pail.
Totally.
Don't drink it straight. It's meant to add ethanol to things. It's 95% pure chemical ethanol with almost no water.
That's
if you drink it straight, your capillaries can pop, you can go blind, you'll get alcohol poisoning, all kinds of bad things. Please only use it mixed.
Science facts.
Great question. All right, so now you tasted this, yes?
Yes.
And when you breathe in at the end, what you're doing is forcing all of those wonderful flavors. You ever laugh milk out your nose?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you did.
Unfortunately.
Because your mouth and your nose are connected through your olfactory passage. And there's a reason for that. Their nose is actually doing most of the tasting. 99% of everything you think you've tasted in your life.
Yeah, like when you're sick and you can't taste anything.
That's exactly right. So go back to that tongue thing. Do you remember what the zones were?
No, it was sweet in the back, or the tips, the back, and
sour.
Sour on the sides.
Yeah. Salty.
Salt was the tip.
Don't even worry about where, because it was wrong.
Okay.
And bitter. So sweet, sour, salty, bitter.
Yeah, right.
There's a fifth one.
Umami?
Yes, I knew you were going to know that. So that was actually discovered.
Umami's just a good word. If I ever see that, I'm like, this is going to be delicious, whatever it is.
It's the flavor of savory, basically. A little bit of salt, a little bit of protein. But sweet, sour, salt, bitter is what most people think. Well, where on the tongue then is orange or vanilla or cinnamon?
Now we're just getting philosophical.
It doesn't exist on the tongue. Your tongue can't taste any of those things. Those are in your nose. Those are flavors. The tongue can only taste sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and umami. So if you actually want to experience flavor, like orange and cardamom and vanilla, or smoke, or all the things that are in whiskey, barley, you've got to get your nose involved.
Which is why sometimes when you burn your tongue really bad, you can still kind of taste things.
Bet.
They feel weird in your mouth.
It's why they tell you to hold your nose before you drink something that doesn't taste good.
I do that with medicine, totally.
So the point of the organoleptic tasting is to use your nose as much as possible. And then when you breathe in at the end, you get what's called the finish. You've heard people talk about finish.
Yeah.
And the finish can be 1 to 5 seconds. Like of just all kinds of different. So do it again now that you know what you're doing. And I want you to get your nose. You nose now. You're priming your nose. Now it knows what to expect. God, I got to stop using the word nose. And then go ahead and when it's in your mouth and you're swirling around, actually kind of chew it like mouthwash. Like, yeah. Good. Then swallow, close your eyes, breathe in very gently through your mouth. You get all of that other stuff coming on in your nose.
Like a history of this beverage.
Exactly.
Whoa.
So that's an organoleptic tasting. Now the last thing I want to tell you...
That's so much better than a shot, let me tell you.
Way better. The last thing I want to tell you is if this tastes strong to you, like it's got too much alcohol, I want you to add water. There's nothing wrong with that. And master distillers, when you taste spirits with them, will give you water. Because remember, alcohol is toxic. Our bodies know that. If we drink alcohol that has too much alcohol content, our tongue just shuts off. That's when we feel it burning. It's actually your tongue shutting off and saying, just spit it out. I'm not going to tell you whether it's good or bad. Because if I told you it was poison, but delicious, That doesn't work. So it just shuts off. When you add water, you allow it to get past the guard of your tongue, and your tongue will turn back on. So please, if you don't like drinking spirits straight out of the bottle, add ice, add water. Don't let anybody tell you it's wrong or that you're being a baby about it or anything like that. Add as much water as it takes so that it does not burn. We call that opening it up.
If they do, opening it up.
Yeah,
I've
because
heard that
watering
before.
it down doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
But if anyone gives you a hard time, you can just knowledge bomb them that they can only smell out of one of their nostrils, and you will be the king of the party or queen.
No one's going to argue with you at that point. Okay, so let's wrap this whole thing up now.
Yes.
Let's take a look. So now we have the finished scotch, okay? And let's go back to our last step here. So this is what we started with. Yes.
Clear.
Now you
moonshine.
hold this up and look at the difference.
That is a serious difference.
Right? So it's almost whiskey already.
Wow.
Now I want you to nose it. You know how to do this now. Nose this one first, though.
Okay.
And then I want you to nose that, and I want you to nose that.
Okay, this one definitely smells closer to rubbing alcohol
That's right.
or vodka.
Very good.
And then this
You're good at this.
has a little more. I love my dog. We're very close. I've learned a lot from him. This is less like rubbing alcohol, more like something with personality and or flavor to it. Although nothing as good as this, which has like vanilla in it and like all kinds of things, like matured flavors and smells.
I love that you're getting vanilla. Yeah. There is actually vanillin in there. The wood has a chemical called lignin, and when it reacts with alcohol, it turns into vanillin. You nailed it.
Man.
That's amazing. All right. So, did I drop
Only
enough
because I
knowledge
have
on
an
you?
amazing teacher, yes.
Good?
Oh, so cheers to that.
So cheers to that. This is good stuff.
It's going to be a good weekend.
I know. I know.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. Anthony, you mastermind.
You're
mastermind.
You're the best.
I'd say we've almost even graduated Mixology 101 into 201.
Yeah, we're definitely in 201.
Class is in session, my friends. Drink responsibly and have a great weekend.